All right, I have Captain Bobby Parker with me from the Salvation Army. And Bobby's been just great. He's been with us, about 6 months now, Bobby?
Yeah, almost 6 months. Yeah.
Wow, time flies. He's got a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, and we're just really glad to have him here in Lubbock. And the Salvation Army is sort of like it's sort of, what do we call it, monastic in a way. It's, these guys are committed, and they're allowed to have families, so not that way. But they are, committed to a ministry, and they are ordained ministers. We call them officers. Let me start from the beginning. The Salvation Army was formed in the 1850s?
Yeah, 1865.
1865 by William
Booth.
William Booth.
Yes, sir.
Who ministered to the poor in London. A lot of alcoholism, and he believed the only way to get these guys out, what worked, was Christ, essentially, in their lives, and some strict attention. And he formed the Salvation Army around a military style because it works.
Right.
And they even went as far as to have the officer corps and the enlisted corps would be the church. And they were actually Wesleyan Methodists, very conservative sort of Methodist sect. And they didn't intend it to be a church, but it just seemed to work better. It's a longer story than this, but it seemed to work better to just have a church where everyone was more easily accepted. They were almost over-accepted in the churches they were going to. They were uncomfortable, and people were pouring so much love, and it just kind of got uncomfortable. So they formed their own church. I think William Booth's son had talked them into finally forming the church, and they did. And to this day, if you go to the Salvation Army downtown, we're at 16th Street and Texas Ave. No, 16th Street and Avenue J.
Yeah, right in between J and K.
Right. Yeah, you're always welcome there. We have church services at just like most of your Church of Christ or Baptist or Roman Catholic at about 10:45 a.m. And we have a chapel there. It looks very much like the very traditional Baptist chapel I grew up in. And it's a pretty normal church.
Yeah, correct.
Music, choir, hymnal, that sort of thing. A lot of the young kids, they're doing great over there. But the Salvation Army's mission has been to take care of people's physical needs so that we can reach them in their spiritual needs. So ultimately, whether you're homeless or not, that's not our mission. Our mission is to lead people to Christ. And we believe that ultimately that's also been successful in healing people from a lot of the great addictive illnesses we suffer from, drug addiction, alcoholism, and other things, and maybe just being poor and having more issues in that realm. And we're there to help you with your physical needs so that we can create relationships and help you with your spiritual needs. Now, of course, this is the season where you see our bell ringers, and it's a completely different type of, it's an organization. And, Bobby, we start planning in the summer, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And this, for our nearly $300 million budget, this is we're trying to raise nearly $225,000 this year. So a large part of our operational budget for the whole year is made up in these 28 kettle days that we do have.
We are very strict with the money. We do not abuse the money. If you see there are some charity trackers out there, our percentage of going to administration versus the charity is, it's very high or low, depending on which side you're looking at it.
Right.
Most of it goes to the charity. As a matter of fact, our cafeteria is open every day in the morning and the evening. And I think we do. Is it about 100,000 meals a year?
Yeah, we're this past year we're just right around 100,000 people, 100,000 meals.
By the way, it's sort of a community. If you ever go to our cafeteria in the morning or the evening, a lot of people they have a place to live. Most of them are not homeless. They just it's camaraderie.
Right. Absolutely. It's kind of a no questions asked kind of meal, and you get people from all walks of life. You'll see entire families come in with baby carriages and strollers, and just really anybody who needs a hot meal for whatever reason.
We're sort of a neighborhood cafe. There's a lot of lonely people out there. They come, and hopefully they're not lonely anymore. They've got us. And so we serve a broad range. I say we. I'm the vice chairman. I think I'm the longest serving vice chairman of the board of directors there, the advisory board. And I just can't. Look, guys, I'm busy, okay? I just can't seem to graduate to the next deal. But we've got an incredible board of directors, and now we've got some incredible officers and staff. And we are hands down the top, if not one of the top charities in this region. I think your dollar, every dollar you put into that kettle goes a long way.
Right, and it stays local, which I think is very important to the people in most communities. Every dollar we raise in Lubbock stays in Lubbock.
Now, that being said, homeless issues have been an interest of mine for years. Of course, I'm an Air Force veteran. I heard stories for years about all these homeless vets, and so a buddy and I, he was an Iraq Army, and we went under the bridges trying to find all these homeless vets. We were in Austin, terrible homeless issues there and problems. And you essentially can't use, they have beautiful parks, but you can't use them. There's just crack dens everywhere. So we went into these crack dens and tried to find all of our homeless brothers in arms. We couldn't find any. Sure, there must be some somewhere, but the fact of the matter is we found a lot of guys with the veteran sign. I'm a veteran, Vietnam veteran, but they didn't know who their commander was or MOS or anything. We found that they weren't veterans, but we did just find a lot of people who were almost Hollywood-style stories. Stories of despair, stories of addiction, alcoholism, mental illness. Every once in a while, someone, maybe just a bad attitude, down in there, couldn't keep the job, and we had some issues. And so I got caught up as a homeless activist, but I wanted the truth, Came here to Lubbock, didn't like the style of some of the homeless activists. I feel like they were almost trying to make themselves feel better rather than helping the homeless. I know that's quite an accusation, but there was also some political, it seems like they were on a political streak, trying to change people's political opinions, again, rather than helping the homeless. And I discovered the Salvation Army. We had a great captain, Michael Morton, who I'm still friends with. And I really enjoyed how the Salvation Army was trying to deal with the realities of homelessness, the realities of our spiritual life versus our physical life, and how we kind of refuse to enable people. We want to see progress. We're here to help you, and we have our bad days, particularly those super cold days. But we want to help people. But we want to do it in a responsible manner, helping people in a responsible manner. Does that sound weird to you? So, no. Bobby, tell me what you're thinking about this issue.
No, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, and you mentioned earlier kind of how the Salvation Army was formed, and, William Booth, a young minister at the time, walking with his son, and they were noticing all these people just in the streets and sleeping in these alleys in the East End of London, and he literally turned over to his son and said, "Hey, did you know these guys were sleeping here? We've got to do something." And he kind of from that moment on realized that, there was something that needed to be done. There was a big problem that needed to be addressed. And one of the things he realized is that he couldn't really address a lot of those issues until he took care of a lot of their basic needs. And so, we at the Salvation Army are very intentional about getting people those immediate services they need, whether it's shelter and food and clothing. And then we're able to, like you kind of mentioned, get them into some case management that's, tailored to their individual needs, so that we can not just give them a Band-Aid, but really give them the tools, the resources, the education that they need to get back on their feet and to be, integrated back into society and become, great members in their communities themselves.
Bobby, do we find that most of the time we fail? These addictions are really tough to overcome. I think science is starting to make some progress, but we're not there yet. And so if we have a ratio of success of what is our ratio? Like 10%, which is high, I think, 8 to 10%, which is actually very high. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and the interesting thing about that is, when I do look into Scripture, you see it mentioned countless times that there's always going to be needy people in the land. So it makes it really difficult, when you're in this type of work, to how do you measure success, and you would think statistically, the better work that you do, the less people that you would see served. So it's kind of hard to gauge your success when you look strictly at statistics.
Right, and actually, I think our success rate is about 8 to 10%, which is very high. If you go to the Haven in San Antonio, I think their success rate is like less than 5%. They don't have, they're a public facility. They don't have the factor of Christ, I would argue, the spiritual life, which I think is something that gets us that extra 3 to 4% of success rate, if not higher. So, if y'all are wondering who we are and what we do, we are the Salvation Army. We want to, we are known for handling homeless needs and needs of the poor, but our end result is to lead people to Christ. It's a ministry. And so, but again, we want to be a responsible ministry, and that's a tough issue too, isn't it, Bobby? Where we've got churches who and we'll talk about this after. Let me ask the question. I'll let you think about it. We'll handle it after the break. We've got churches who like to feed and do different things for the poor because we're commanded to do that. But unfortunately, it can also become an enabling type of situation, or a situation where we're actually might be doing more harm than good. That's not a statement, that's a question. And so I want you to think about it as we go into the next, at the bottom, towards the end of this half hour. How do we best handle these issues in a responsible manner? Colonel Tepper and Captain Bobby Parker of the Salvation Army. We're sitting in for Chad Hasty today. Who knows where Chad is? He likes to live the high life. He's in Dallas at some 5-star restaurant. All right, I asked Bobby a tough question before the break. There's a lot of, God bless Lubbock and America in general. They just want to give, and they see people in need, and they just want to give. The trouble is, can you give too much? Can you actually have a reverse? Can you actually do more harm than good? And Bobby, I know the Salvation, we're real careful about that. We don't mean to, if your church is out there feeding the homeless, that's just great, man. And keep it up. We like to coordinate where there is a homeless consortium. We like to sort of divvy out the days where you can go and help. But is it possible you can do too much and you really just, maybe enabling these guys to not make a change in their life? What do you think about that, Bob?
Well, I think you kind of mentioned it there, but I think you're right. I think there are a lot of good organizations out there that do things, and I think one thing we can try to do responsibly as a community and as a community of service organization is to try to just not try to do everything half good, but try to do the things that you do really well, and then I think where we can avoid duplication and work together, and I think we have a lot of great community partners in the Salvation Army where there are some services that we identify that people need that maybe we don't necessarily provide, but we're able to work closely with other organizations, and I think that's really where we can best utilize all of our resources in the community.
I know when folks are driving by Tent City or some other congregation points of the homeless around town, people say, why aren't people doing something? Why aren't they coordinating? Actually, they are coordinating here in Lubbock very well. There's Family Promise, there's Catholic Family Services, there's Salvation Army, and a lot of the mental health institutions and Community Health Center of Lubbock helps out a lot. And they are coordinating very well. A lot of the churches have coordinating feeding days and things like that. No one's starving out there. Just, look, these guys are, they see the world a little differently, a lot of them. We call it the chronic homeless, by the way. These are not, there's also just a lot of poor people in town, The transmission breaks in the car, and it's either rent or the car to get to work. And we deal with that, too, in some ways. We have a little fund where we help people when they're maybe some utilities or something like that. But I'm talking mostly about the chronic homeless, which are the people who you see living under the bridges and things like that. And so there is a lot of coordination, but a lot of these guys, look, they have a pack of cigarettes, a beer, their dog, and a tent. And there's just not a lot of motivation to get out there. They feel like they've made their bed in life, and they are fighting some heavy addictions and mental illness, or all the above. And they're having trouble getting out of there. Now, we think spiritually we can make a change. We have to keep trying. That's our mandate. But short of that, they are being cared for in a way. Now, Tent City always wants to improve. I have an argument with them all the time. Not an argument, actually a friendly debate. How much do we want to improve it? I like it. It's there. It's in a place that's out of the way. It's not affecting businesses that are living their lives correctly. But it's giving these guys a place to go. You don't want me to hang around in front of your business, or where do you want me to go? Well, you can go to Tent City. They have rules. Yes, they're going to have rules. We have rules. Everyone has rules. But we've all made our choices. You can go to Tent City. It's not perfect there, that cold running through your bones in a tent in the middle of winter is Christ telling you it's not natural for man to be living out there. Okay, make a change in your life. I don't want them to be too comfortable. I don't want them to freeze to death either. Okay, but there's a certain fine line where I don't want to enable them to stay out there for the rest of their lives. I want them to get help. I want them to turn their lives around and become productive. But it's a free country, and I'd rather have it that way. So when they're ready to make a change, we're here with the Salvation Army. If it's a particularly cold day, we relax our rules or drop them, or relax them. We still don't want any dangerous people in the shelter. We have a lot of people there, but we want to relax them, get them in a warm place where they get fed. And we also go out at night. If it's 30 degrees at 6 p.m., our canteen goes out. Dave Frericks is the king of the canteen. They go out. Bobby goes out. A lot of our volunteers go out, and we feed people where we can find them, get them some scarves, blankets, hats, and give them the best chance they can get. Bobby, do you have anything to add to any of that? Is there anything Lubbock needs to be doing better that you've seen in your short time here?
Well, yeah, I think the one thing that we can realize is that, when we typically think about a homeless person, we have maybe one image in our mind, but I think, a recent study shows that there's nearly 40% of Americans have received help from a charitable group at some point in their lifetime, and that 1 in 8 Americans have spent a night in a shelter. And so I think it's important to realize that, a homeless person can be so many different kinds of people, and we see people in the Salvation Army every day that come from so many different walks of life and that are in the cycle that you speak of. They're at so many different points in that cycle, and so I think it's a challenge for us to try to determine what kind of services and what kind of solutions that each individual person needs on a case by case basis, and that's why I think good case management is so important, because there's so many different kinds of people, so many different kinds of problems.
We are as different as each snowflake is different from each other. That's how different we are. I was at the shelter one day. I was walking in, and this group of guys in an old car pulled up and said, "Hey, when does the shelter open?" They're heading cross country, I think, to get an oil job or something, Bobby. And so you never know what you're going to find. Hey, these are guys who want to work. They just they're short on gas money and they're short on food money, and they're just kind of stopping in. I'm glad they did. That's smart. Stop in. That's what we're there for. If they need a hand up for a day, we're happy to give it to them. We have a church too, as I mentioned earlier, and with every meal, there's a prayer, and with every Sunday, Bobby gives he gives a little service to the people staying at the shelter, and then he comes and gives the main service to the chapel. So again, everything we do is geared towards leading people to Christ, where they'll find the ultimate peace through eternity. Now, there's also been a string of opinion in Lubbock of, feel guilty, you're real close, any one of you can be homeless at any time. Well, look, I don't want you folks to feel guilty on Thanksgiving. I want you to be thankful, but don't feel guilty. I want you to enjoy your homes. I want you to enjoy your family. And we want you to have a great Thanksgiving free of guilt. Bobby, I want to thank you. You're speaking at the Lions Club today. And have a great speech, and we wish you great success in this Kettle year.
Thank you.